All right, let's dive into language learning. Specifically, we're looking at how to really make English stick.
Sounds good.
We've got some excerpts from a podcast episode all about those good habits,
Yeah.
the ones that get results.
Yeah. It's fascinating.
This idea that it's not about cramming, but about consistent action.
Right, exactly, over time.
It's like building a house.
Yeah.
You don't just chuck all the bricks in a pile.
You need a plan.
Yeah, a blueprint. And this podcast episode we're looking at gives us 5 habits to build those English skills.
5, huh?
First up is daily practice, even if it's just 15 minutes.
Oh, that's doable.
Right.
The source actually compares it to a dripping faucet, slowly filling a glass.
Oh, I like that.
Might seem small, but over time, it adds up.
Yeah. It's such a good visual because we've all felt overwhelmed by, the hugeness of learning a new language.
Oh, absolutely.
But if you can shift from intensity to consistency, it feels manageable.
Very much more, yeah.
15 minutes, reading an article, listening to a podcast.
Hey, like us.
Exactly. Or even talking to yourself in English.
That's a good one.
It all adds up.
Yeah.
It all contributes to that progress.
And there's research on this, studies showing that those short bursts of practice, they trigger neuroplasticity.
Whoa, what's that?
It's basically your brain rewiring itself, forming new connections.
So even if it's just like a tiny bit every day, it's
Making a difference.
That's amazing. I always struggle with motivation for language learning, but if I know it's actually changing my brain,
Changes everything.
totally. So it's about making that practice a ritual.
Like non-negotiable, part of your day.
Yeah, like set that time aside.
Morning, lunch break, whatever works.
Okay, I'm sold on the daily practice, even if it's short. But what about making it more immersive?
Right, good point.
We can't all just jet off to an English-speaking country.
Well, that's where habit number 2 comes in.
Yeah.
Surrounding yourself with English, even if you're not physically there.
So creating like an English bubble.
Exactly. Think about what you already do, like checking your phone, social media, music.
Oh, so like shifting those to be more English-focused.
Exactly. Instead of scrolling mindlessly, you could follow English-speaking creators or, interesting Twitter threads.
Oh, and music is such an easy switch. New playlists, new artists to discover.
And even something as simple as changing your phone's language settings.
Makes a difference.
Huge. You're navigating menus, notifications, all in English.
Like passive learning. My brain's just absorbing it without even trying.
It's about making English a part of your life, not just an isolated activity.
Right. Not just a textbook thing.
And that leads perfectly to the next habit, which I think you'll find interesting.
Okay, hit me with it. What's number 3?
This one's about speaking. The source is very clear. Don't wait till your English is perfect.
Oh, tell me about it. I think we all fall into that trap.
Afraid of making mistakes, so we avoid speaking altogether.
It's terrifying, but it's like any skill, right?
Like playing an instrument or learning to code, practice is key.
Totally. The more you do it, the better you get. And those mistakes, they're just learning opportunities.
Exactly. I remember when I first started learning Spanish, so self-conscious, my face would go bright red.
Oh, I know that feeling.
But then you realize everyone goes through that.
It's part of the process.
And the source suggests a few things. Find a language partner, join a group, or even just talk to yourself in English.
Talking to myself. That I can do. I do it in my native language anyway. Might as well switch it up.
It might feel odd at first,
Probably.
but it's great practice. Forming sentences, trying new words, getting comfy with the flow.
Makes sense. And if talking to myself is too weird, there are those apps and online communities.
For language exchange, yeah.
Okay, so I'm seeing a pattern here. It's
Yeah.
about building this framework around learning.
Not just isolated study, but weaving it into life.
Exactly. Makes it feel less daunting. So what about habit number 4?
Number 4 is all about vocabulary. Keep a vocabulary journal.
Ooh, a journal.
Think of it like your own personal dictionary.
I love that idea. But I've tried before, writing words down, using apps, and it just didn't stick.
Well, that's where active recall comes in. Instead of just passively reading, you're really engaging with the words.
Oh, I see.
The source recommends writing not just the word, but its meaning, an example sentence, even a visual.
Ah, so giving it context, not just recognizing it.
Exactly. I'm a visual learner, so I love sketching little doodles next to definitions.
That's a great idea. And is there a right way to do the journal?
Not really. Some people like pen and paper, others prefer digital.
I can see both sides. I like the feeling of writing, but digital is so convenient.
It is.
Maybe a mix of both would work.
Exactly. Try things out, see what you enjoy. The key is to make it a system you'll actually use.
Makes sense. Learning shouldn't feel like a chore.
It shouldn't. It should be an adventure, speaking of which.
Habit number 5, the fun one.
Yes. This one is all about making it fun, making it personal.
Because if you're not enjoying it.
It's tough to stay motivated.
So this is where we get into intrinsic motivation,
Right. You got it. It's about finding that internal drive, that spark.
the passion that keeps you going.
Exactly. And the best way to do that is aligning your learning with your interests.
So ditching the boring textbook stuff and finding things that excite me, right?
Precisely. The source suggests thinking about your hobbies, your passions.
Like instead of forcing myself to study, I could watch my favorite English movie.
Exactly. Or read about topics you love, or even join online gaming communities.
That's so much better. It's like making English an extension of the things I already love.
And, this can also connect you with like-minded people.
Yeah, it's not just a solo thing anymore.
Imagine joining an online forum for English-speaking gamers, or a virtual book club.
Oh, I love that. I've always thought of language learning as this solitary thing, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't. It can be this incredible shared experience.
So it's all about finding your tribe, getting support.
Exactly. Makes the whole journey so much more rewarding.
And, this brings up something that goes beyond the individual habits.
Oh, interesting. What's that?
It's the power of community, but we'll get into that next time.
Sounds good. So we talked about those 5 habits, right, for learning English.
Yeah, those were great.
But there's another piece to this puzzle that we need to explore a bit.
You mean the community aspect? I'm honestly curious because I always thought of language learning as like a solo thing.
Ah, I get it. Textbooks, drills, all by yourself.
Exactly. But are you saying the social side can actually help?
It can. It can make it more fun, too.
Okay, now I'm really interested. How does that work exactly?
Think of it this way. When you're part of a community, you get access to so much more than just your own resources.
Oh, like tapping into other people's knowledge.
Yes. Other learners, native speakers, everyone has something to offer.
It's like having a built-in support system, right? People who get the struggles.
Absolutely. And when you're feeling stuck or discouraged, that community can be a huge boost.
It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
That's perfect. And these communities are everywhere. Local groups, online forums, even social media.
So it's about finding your people, your tribe.
The ones who share your passion for the language.
I could look for like online book clubs or groups for people learning English for travel, maybe.
Those are great ideas. And don't forget about casual conversations with native speakers.
Oh, like just striking up a chat at a coffee shop.
Exactly. Or with a friend, a colleague, anyone who's fluent.
I've always been a bit scared to do that,
Hmm.
worried about making mistakes.
It's understandable, but honestly, most native speakers are really patient.
Really?
They're often flattered that you're making the effort.
Huh. Maybe it's time to get over that fear then. After all, we did say mistakes are part of the process.
That's the spirit. It's about embracing those little stumbles.
Okay, I'm sold on the community aspect now. It's not just about the practical help, but also the emotional support.
Makes a huge difference. It turns language learning into this shared journey.
And this makes me think about something that's often overlooked.
What's that?
The whole culture thing.
Culture, yes. How it ties into language.
It's like you can't really understand a language without understanding the culture behind it, right?
Exactly. They're so intertwined. When you're part of a community, you're exposed to those cultural nuances too.
It's like, it's more than just words and grammar.
It's about understanding the way people think, the way they interact.
This reminds me of when I was in Italy trying to order a cappuccino after lunch.
Oh no, did it not go well?
I used the right words, but everyone was so confused. Apparently, cappuccino's a morning thing there.
Ah, yes. The cultural norms around coffee. A classic example.
I was so embarrassed, but it was a good lesson. Even something simple can have a cultural aspect.
Language is alive,
Yeah.
It's always changing and adapting.
How do we learn that cultural sensitivity without having to travel all the time?
That's where those communities come in again. Engaging with native speakers, observing, listening, asking questions.
It's all connected, isn't it? The community, the mistakes, the culture, it all makes learning so much richer.
It does. It's not about reaching some finish line. It's about enjoying the process.
Exactly. It's about opening yourself up to new experiences.
And on that note, let's move to a really fascinating part of language.
Whoa, what's next?
Storytelling.
Storytelling. I love a good story, but how does that fit in?
Well, think about it. Stories are how we communicate, how we share, how we connect.
True. From ancient myths to modern movies, they've always been powerful.
And for language learning, stories are a fantastic way to immerse yourself.
So instead of just memorizing words, we should be looking for stories that bring the language to life.
Exactly. Engaging stories that make you want to keep learning.
It's like sneaking in the education while enjoying a good time.
And stories come in all shapes and sizes. Novels, films, songs, even just conversations.
So it's about being open to those stories wherever we find them.
Exactly. Maybe joining a book club, seeing a play, or just asking someone to share their story.
I never thought of it that way. It's not just about textbooks and drills. It's about embracing the cultural side, the storytelling aspect.
It really changes the whole experience.
It does. Makes it so much more engaging.
And as you listen to or read those stories, pay attention to how the language is used.
Like how they convey emotions, build suspense, all that.
Exactly. It's like learning from the masters, absorbing their techniques.
Wow. This has given me so much to think about.
And to wrap up this part, I'll leave you with a question. How can you incorporate storytelling into your own language learning?
That's a good one.
Ah.
I'll definitely be pondering that. Yeah, that question about stories, it's really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Like, maybe instead of those boring textbook exercises, I'll try reading some short stories,
Yeah.
by English authors.
That's a great idea. Or even watching a film, something classic, with subtitles.
Oh, yeah, that's good too. It's funny, because I love reading and movies, but I never thought of them for language learning.
You've always kind of kept them separate.
Yeah, like learning time versus free time.
Ah, I see. But they don't have to be separate.
It's like, why not combine the fun with the learning?
Exactly. It makes it so much more enjoyable, and then you actually stick with it.
It's like sneaking in those healthy veggies, but with a tasty meal.
Exactly. Speaking of which,
Oh, another analogy.
well, we got to talk about another important ingredient for language learning, feedback.
Feedback. Yeah, it's important, but I always get a bit nervous about it.
Nervous? How come?
Like, what if I make mistakes? I don't want to be judged.
I get it. It's natural to feel that way. But remember, feedback isn't about being critical.
It's not.
It's about guidance, support, helping you pinpoint those areas where you can get even better.
So it's more about, like, seeing it as an opportunity to grow.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, feedback can come from anywhere.
Anywhere.
A teacher, a tutor, a language partner, even a friend who's fluent.
Oh, I see. Like, different perspectives can help.
And don't forget about technology. Apps, online communities, they all offer ways to get feedback.
Yeah, there's so much out there now. It's amazing. But how do we make sure the feedback is actually helpful?
That's a great question. Not all feedback is created equal.
Right.
When you're asking for it, be clear about your goals. What are you trying to improve?
Like, is it pronunciation?
Grammar.
Vocabulary?
Exactly. And be specific about the type of feedback you want.
So, like, if it's writing, maybe I'd ask about grammar or how clear my ideas are.
Perfect. The more specific you are, the more useful the feedback will be.
And it's okay to ask questions if I don't understand something, right?
Of course. It's your learning journey. You gotta be in control. And speaking of journeys, remember how we talked about language learning as a process?
Yeah, not a destination.
Exactly. It's so easy to get caught up in the idea of becoming fluent as if it's an end goal.
But it's more like an ongoing adventure, right?
Yes. Language is always changing, and so is our understanding of it.
It's like exploring a huge map. There's always something new to discover.
Exactly. So embrace the journey, enjoy those little wins, and never lose that curiosity for English.
That's such a great way to put it. So, I guess this is the end of our deep dive.
It is.
I hope everyone listening has found some useful tips and maybe even a little inspiration.
Me too. Remember, consistency is key. Stay curious. And don't forget about the social and cultural side of language.
Those are the real secrets to success.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all for today. Happy learning, everyone. Hey, everyone. Welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to, supercharge your English learning?
Always ready should be a good one.
It is. It is. So whether you are just starting out learning English or you've been at it for a while, we're going to look at some smart habits. Not just hitting the books harder, but smarter.
Right, like strategy.
Yeah. I was looking at the source material we've got for this, and they make this analogy with building a house, and it's so true.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. It's about foundations.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to lay the foundation for you to become fluent and not just try to stack up vocab words.
Yeah, vocabulary is important, of course.
But it's not the only thing.
You got it.
So habit number 1 is having a daily English routine.
Makes sense.
So I'll admit, when I first saw this, I was like, ugh, yeah, consistency, blah, blah, blah.
Mm,
Like we hear that all the time.
everyone says that. Yep.
Yeah. But the source actually like digs into why it's so important.
Yeah, so it's like our brains like to be efficient. You think about it, it takes a lot of energy to make decisions, right? So when we have a routine, we kind of put things on autopilot.
That's
So
interesting.
then you don't waste your energy thinking about whether you should practice English today.
You do it. Right.
Exactly.
That's cool. Yeah. And the source had some really good, like, quick win ideas for building a routine.
Mm.
Things like listening to podcasts in English or watching videos in English.
Oh, yeah, there's tons of good content out there.
There is so much. And even just writing a few sentences in English every day can help.
Yeah, little things make a big difference when you do them consistently.
They do. They really do. And I think the key here is personalization, right? It's not about following some rigid plan. It's got to work for you.
Absolutely. If you're a morning person, you do it in the morning.
Yeah.
Or if you've got like a long commute, maybe that's when you listen to a podcast.
Totally. Oh, and they have this pro tip in the source that I thought was really good. And that was pick a specific time every day to practice.
Yeah.
So, like, put it in your calendar or something.
Oh, yeah. So it's not just like floating around in your head.
It's an appointment with yourself.
You got it. All right. So are you ready for a habit that's like gonna kind of rock your world?
Ooh. All right. Lay it on me.
This one challenges the way we traditionally think about learning a
You
language.
talk about thinking in English.
That's the one.
Yeah, that was like a huge aha moment for me when I first heard about
Me
it.
too. Honestly, at first I was pretty skeptical though. I was like, how am I supposed to just switch my brain like that?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a total game changer. You know how so many of us get stuck in this translation loop? We're constantly like going back and forth between our native language and English.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But if you can start thinking directly in English,
That's where it's at.
that's fluency right there.
Yep. Yeah. It's like, imagine if you were trying to get somewhere and you had to stop and look at a map every 2 seconds.
Oh, that would be so frustrating.
Right. Versus just like knowing the route and going.
Exactly. And thinking in English, it's not just about speed. You're training your brain to process the language in a different way.
It's like building those mental muscles.
That's a great way to put it. So the source suggests things like labeling objects around your house in English. I know it sounds a little silly.
I know, I was picturing myself like covering my entire house in sticky notes.
Yeah. But it does work. It's a way to immerse yourself in the language, even in your own home. You don't have to label everything. Just start with a few key objects that you use every day.
That's a good point. I actually tried something kind of like that the other day. I just like narrated my morning routine in English.
Oh, nice. How did that go?
It was fun. A little weird at first, I'm not going to lie,
I bet.
but I think I'm going to keep doing it.
See, you're already finding ways to make it work for you.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about vocabulary. I think we all know how tough this can be.
Oh, yeah.
I used to stare at vocabulary lists for hours,
Yeah.
and they would just disappear from my brain.
Oh, it's the worst. It's like trying to remember the names on a guest list without ever meeting any of the people.
Yeah, good analogy.
So the source material really emphasizes learning vocabulary in context. Like, that is key.
Yeah, context is king.
It is. But what does that actually look like?
Yeah, how do you do that?
So think about it this way. When you encounter a new word in a movie, or a song, or even just a conversation, it's not just a word on a page anymore. It's connected to a story,
That's a good point.
a feeling, an experience. And our brains remember things better when they have a context.
That makes a lot of sense. The source also had some pretty cool examples, like picking up phrases from movies and TV shows that you watch.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one, especially if it's something you really enjoy watching.
Yeah, you'll hear those phrases over and over again.
You will. Or even reading news articles in English.
Yeah, you'll come across a lot of new vocabulary there.
And the most important thing is to use those new words as soon as possible. Make a sentence with them right away.
Really cement them in your memory.
Exactly. They mention some apps in the source material like Anki and Quizlet, but those are just tools. The real habit here is actively seeking out context for new vocabulary. All right, ready for a challenge?
Oh boy, what's next?
You know it. We're talking about speaking practice.
I think this is where a lot of people get intimidated, myself included.
It's natural to feel nervous, like you've got stage fright. But fluency isn't just about knowing the words, it's about actually using them.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's kind of like learning to play an instrument. You can know all the notes, but you won't sound good until you practice putting them all together.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So how do we get over that fear and just start talking?
The source has some great ideas, like
Yeah.
joining online groups or communities where you can practice speaking with other English learners,
Yeah, that's a good one.
or even just recording yourself speaking. Oh, and then listening back.
Yeah, you can learn a lot by hearing yourself.
You can. It can be cringy, though.
Oh, it can be. But get used to it. And of course, if you have friends who are native English speakers, or even just friends who are learning English, don't be afraid to ask them to practice with you.
Yeah, find those people who are supportive and patient and willing to help you out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the most important thing here is to find what works for you. Some people love speaking in groups. Others prefer one-on-one conversations. Experiment and see what feels most comfortable.
Yeah, totally. So this last habit, I think it's one that a lot of us, myself included, tend to overlook.
Oh, really? Which one?
It's reflecting and self-correcting.
Yeah.
We put in all this time and effort to learn, but we don't always stop to analyze what we're learning, how we can improve.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, that's so important. It's like having a coach, right? They watch you play, they analyze your strengths and weaknesses, and then they help you adjust your strategy.
That's a great way to put it. And you can do the same thing with your English learning.
So how do we actually do that? Like, how do we become our own English coach?
The source suggests some great things, like recording yourself speaking and then listening back to it.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
It's helpful for a lot of different things.
Huh.
Or keeping a journal to track your progress and identify areas where you're getting stuck.
A learning journal. I like it.
And of course, don't be afraid to ask for feedback from others. Get a fresh perspective on your learning.
I think what I'm hearing is that we need to turn our learning into a continuous feedback loop. So we're constantly refining and improving our skills.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Just a few small tweaks can make a big difference over time.
That's so encouraging. So
Yeah.
there you have it, everyone. 5 super powerful habits to really transform your English learning.
It's not magic, but it's the closest thing we've got.
It is. It's so true. But we want to leave you with something to think about, a question for you to ponder. Which of these habits feels most challenging to you? And what's one small step you can take today to start building that habit? We're excited to hear your thoughts.
Until next time, happy learning, everyone.
See ya.